Recently I got this comment from a viewer of a video, and he asks a really good question, and that is, how low can you go? Meaning, how low pressure can you put in your pressure pot and still suppress the bubbles that form in the resin? It's a good question because a lot of you don't have a compressor, and most of you certainly don't have pressure pots like these, which are very fast and very efficient at casting resin. But casting resin is part of what I do for a living, so I need a system like this. So what I did was I put this pressure valve on this tank, and that way we can monitor the pressure inside and see how low we can go. This is the resin that I'm going to use for our tests. It's old. It's been around the shop a long time. The top has been off bunches of times, and once I even came into the studio, found the top sitting but next to it. It had been open all night, so I guarantee this resin is going to foam. There's no problem about that. So I think that's going to be a good test. Let's pour some resin and see what happens. This first sample is our control, and I'm letting it cure without any pressure at all. As predicted, we got some excellent foamage. This was our control. For the first test, we're going to start low and run the pressure at about 8 pounds per square inch. And if it works, if it suppresses the bubbles at 8 pounds, we're done. Maybe then we can test even lower pressures, but I'm going to make a prediction that says that 8 pounds will not suppress the foaming in this resin. All right, I mixed up another cup. Let's get it mixed. I want to get it in there before it starts to foam, so we have a fair test. That's going to be mixed enough, I hope. Slam it in, close the valve. All right, the door is shut, and now I'm at about 8 pounds. Let me bring you in closer so you can see that I'm not lying to you. How funny would it be if 8 pounds pressure worked? The test would be over, except we could go lower. And it would be really good news for people who want to use a bike pump or some other simpler apparatus, or even a small compressor to generate the pressure in a tank. Okay, it's time to see how we did. Let's close the valves. Not much air to let out. Well, that's not terrible. All right, look at that. Look at that. I'm going to say not complete suppression, but there's only one way to find out, and that is to head over to the bandsaw. Look at that foamage. It's practically pretty nice foam. Look at that. That is really interesting what that did. As predicted, we did not get anywhere close to complete suppression, but I would not have predicted that kind of opening of cavities. Lots of pin bubbles inside. All right, so there's your answer on that. At that pressure, which is about 8 pounds, that did, I'm going to say, I mean, it is better, it is different, it is trying, you got to give it that, but it's nowhere near adequate. This is an incredibly unscientific test, so I think I'm going to bump up the pressure to 25 pounds and see what that does. If it's complete cure at 25 pounds, we're good there, and then maybe we can split the difference. But I'm just thinking that if I do a 16 pound or something, it's not going to cure. Let's try 25 and see what happens. Okay, that's plenty mixed up, I'd say. 25 pounds, in you go. Okay, so I am right on at 25 pounds, and we'll see how we do. 25 pounds. Let's pull it. Okay, what do you guys think? Think we're good? Think we're still going to have pin bubbles? Let's go find out. Well, I gotta say, it felt a lot more solid. Any guesses? What do you think? You think we're good, or we still got a ways to go? Let's find out. It's the big reveal. Now look at that. Okay, so there's less. We are on our way to suppression, but we still have this issue. There's still enough air in there. It's causing voids. Wow, that is so interesting. All these years I've worked with resin, I never did this kind of testing. I just did whatever worked. Okay, looks like we're going to have to bump it back up. Maybe I'm just lazy, but I am inclined to run the next test at 50 pounds. So let's pop some in the tank and see what that gives us. I have high hopes because that's the pressure that I run most of my castings at, and that's generally what gives me a good result. But we'll see. This is pretty foamy resin, and I'm not 100% sure that even 50 pounds will get us there. It's interesting that there's still, if you look at that, you can still see what would be the pin bubbles on the top surface. That's pretty interesting. Look at that. But we won't know till we see the body of the resin. I can tell you that that felt a lot harder, a lot more solid. Let's see what we got. It looks like there's still some bubblage in there, but they are micro tiny. And I don't even know if they would affect the painting or whatnot. Sanded down, you can see that there's still micro pin bubbles. You can't feel them at all. I can barely feel those scratches. But there are definitely micro bubbles in there. That's really interesting. Look at that. Look at that. Get a good look at them. Tempted to run one more thing and crank it way up, baby. Crank it up to 90 or 100 pounds. See if we totally can suppress those bubbles. This is really a worst case scenario. I mean, this, this resin is really foamy. And mostly you'd be working with resin that's a lot cleaner, a lot less infused with atmospheric moisture. But one more higher pressure test may get us where we want to go. Okay, I am done fooling around. I'm going to run the next shot at around 100 psi and see what happens. Okay, the resin is in the tank. It's a hair over 100 psi. Now we wait and we'll find out what happens. The reason I have pressure pots is that I buy my resin in large quantities and I keep it for a long time. And no matter what, over time, the resin is going to absorb atmospheric moisture. So the pressure pots pay for themselves by letting me buy economical quantities of resin. So here's the 100 batch, and it is looking significantly better. That is basically bubble-free resin right there. I made this video to determine how low you could go with the pressure in your pressure pot. But all I did was confirm what I already know and believe, and that is that it takes a pretty significant amount of pressure to fully eliminate the bubbles that are caused by foaming in the resin. If you're a small shop, your best bet is to buy resin in small quantities. Don't leave the tops off, keeping them sealed up tight, and keep, as much as possible, keep the resin away from air and use it up quickly. And then you just won't have the kind of problems with foaming that I have because I store my resin for so long. This video did not address the subject of air that gets trapped inside the cavity and trying to crush those bubbles out. The best way to eliminate air inside of a mold cavity is to vent the cavity properly so all the air just goes out, rises out naturally. If you have big bubbles inside your cavity, you're just not going to crush it out. You just won't, no matter how much pressure. You'll make them smaller, but you won't get rid of them. So that just won't work. I know that I'm going to get a tremendous amount of blowback on this video. People love their pressure pots. They are passionate about their pressure pots. Guys will go, oh no, I run my pressure pot at 4 psi and it's made out of glass and it's got a screw-on lid. It's a big pickle jar and I get perfect castings every time and I never have any problems and it's so simple and easy. I don't know what your problem is. Yeah.